Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. This particular video, many of you have been asking for many days. So this is a comprehensive look at all the different kinds of literary devices, poetic devices, which are used in different poems of your syllabus. Taken some examples. Since the Maharashtra HSC have already covered it in the poems revision one-shot bullet shot video, this one will have some examples from ISC and ICSE, but this will give you an idea on about how to identify a particular literary or poetic device. There is a very slight subtle difference, but you don't really need to go into the difference between figure of speech and literary device, poetic device, which are all in different categories, but overall they're all called figures of speech, generally speaking. So they are literary devices used to create expressive, imaginative, or impactful language. When you use alliteration, it conveys a particular emphasis. When you use a metaphor, it gives a slightly more intellectual feeling to that particular point that is being made. So expressive, imaginative, and impactful, departing from the literal meaning. So he's a very tall person. Now, tall could mean tall as in the height. Tall could also mean in terms of stature, the kind of work that he has done. He's indeed a very tall person. So that would be using it as a metaphor. They enhance writing by adding emphasis, clarity, or beauty, often through comparisons, exaggerations, or symbolic meaning. So this is essentially the reason why different figures of speech are used in a particular poem, a play, or any creation of prose. So the first one is simile. Now this is the easier of the lot. It is essentially a comparison between two unlike things using like or as. So whenever you see these two words, like or as, you can be sure that this one is a simile. For example, her smile was as bright as the sun. So it was as radiant as the sun. She smiled. Her look was like that of a sunflower. She was so beautiful, so charming, and so radiant. So wherever you use the words as or like, it means that is a simile. Okay. By the time he returned home, his face was as red as a tomato, right? So he was completely red because of the exposure to very harsh and severe sunlight. The second one is a metaphor. The definition is that it is a direct comparison between two unlike things. It is a direct comparison. Now here also you see it is a comparison between two unlike things. The difference is that here implying they are the same. So it's a direct comparison and it would make it seem like they are the same. Time is a thief. Now this you see is a bit of an abstract kind of an idea. Time is a thief, samay ek chor hai, because it keeps on taking away something from you. You think you have 1 hour left, but half an hour later you are left with only 30 minutes. So you are kind of conveying it in a slightly abstract way that time is actually stealing something from you, and therefore you're calling it a thief. So this is the use of a metaphor. Third one is personification, which I personally quite like. Personification is giving human qualities to non-human or inanimate objects or abstract ideas. For example, the wind whispered. Now you do not, because of the kind of sound that the wind makes, it seems as if it's whispering. So you're giving a human quality to something which is inanimate, like the wind. The wind whispered through the trees or the woods. Death be not proud, which is there in your ISC textbook. Death is directly addressed as if it is human, right? So there, death has been personified. Now, the fourth one is alliteration, which again is used many times. The repetition of the initial consonant sounds in nearby words. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Okay, so this is obviously the P consonant has been repeated many times. This is the easiest of the lot to identify. Assonance. It is the repetition of vowel sounds within nearby words. The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. The long A. Rain, plain, Spain, right? So main. So that is where the long A, the vowel has been repeated. That is the case of an assonance being used as a figure of speech. Then it comes to consonants, which is not really, I mean, it's not something which is highlighted too much at your level. The repetition of consonant sounds typically at the end of the words. For example, I gave him a smack means ek thappad. I gave him a smack when I saw his sack packed with snacks. The sk sound, the k sound which has been repeated. Smack, sack, packed, snacks. The lumpy, bumpy road, the mb wala sound, the mp wala sound, lumpy, bumpy road. Then we come to onomatopoeia. I find it very difficult to pronounce this one. Words that imitate the sounds. The bees buzzed, zzz, karke the sound which comes. Now that is not a case of human quality. No, it's not a case of personification. It is a case where you are actually creating a word from the kind of sound that is created by the subject. So the bees buzzed in the garden. Now, hyperbole. Okay, now I remember when we were students, iska pronunciation alag hi hota tha. Hyperbole bolte the at that time. Okay, so one is still used to that. But now the modern day pronunciation, 21st century pronunciation is hyperbole. Hyperbole. Definition. It's an exaggerated statement for emphasis or effect. I've told you a million times. Obviously, no one has told you this a million times. Like your mother may say, I've told you a million times not to put the wet towel on the bed, right? Now, it's highly unlikely that she may have told you a million times. Even if she has told you a million times, it's highly unlikely that she would have counted that it has become now a million times. Fir bhi tum dheet ho, tum gila tauliya bed par dalte ho, right? So this is a case of an exaggeration because your mother wants to emphasize that you are not doing this despite having been told a million times. What is an oxymoron? Oxymoron is a combination of contradictory words. For example, bittersweet. It cannot be bitter as well as sweet, right? Bittersweet memories. You leave something, there was some achhi yadein, there was some not so achhi yadein, so it's bittersweet. So you're bringing these two words together, which essentially means something very opposite to each other. Deafening silence. Silence is supposed to be, completely quiet. And deafening is something which you are talking about, something which kind of makes you deaf. Irony. The definition, a contrast between expectation and reality. A fire station burns down, right? Now, you don't expect a fire station to catch fire, right? I mean, that would be the ultimate irony, right? So that's what it's called. It's very ironic that, something like this happened because this is something which is completely unexpected. Okay. This is in your considerable spec, which is in your ICSE class 10 poem. Irony in the contrast between the size of the mite, the speck, and its intelligence. It's urge to escape, it's urge to save its life, right? So that is again a use of irony. Then we come to imagery. Now, imagery is essentially descriptive language. Do not get confused between imagery and metaphor. Descriptive language that appeals to the senses, the sense of sight, the sense of sound, smell, touch, taste. The golden rays of the setting sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sea. Now, the moment you read this kind of a sentence, you are able to imagine, which is where this particular word is coming from. Image, imagine. You're able to imagine something like this, that it is the sunset which is being described over the sea, over the beach. The golden rays of the setting sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sea. Then we come to symbolism. Using symbols to represent ideas or concepts. For example, a dove often symbolizes peace. right? When you talk about a jackal or a fox, you generally associate that with cunningness. You associate a donkey with something stupid, unfortunately, but that's the way it is. You associate a horse with speed and grace. You associate a dog with loyalty. You associate uh, what do you call it? Um, a mina with something which is sweet. So, sweet voice. So, you kind of associate certain animals, certain birds with something. Similarly, the glove and the lions, the poem which is there in ICSE class 10, the glove is a symbol of challenge because the lady has dropped it into the ring and she wants her lover to go and retrieve it where there are those two ferocious lions. So it is a symbol of challenge being thrown at the lover, the count. In haunted houses, again in ICSE class 10, the house is a symbol of lingering memories. There is a sense of nostalgia. There is a sense of something which has happened in the past. In Tithonus, in ISC class 12, the aging Tithonus symbolizes the curse of immortality without youth. He's growing old, but he will never die. In small towns and the river, again in ISC class 12, the river is a symbol of nostalgia and continuity and life. Then the next few ones are not something which are used very often, but anyway, anaphora. The repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses. I have a dream that one day, I have a dream that every valley. When you repeat a particular phrase, again, this is done to create a sense of emphasis. Then enjambment. Now, this is a normal thing. That is, it's a continuation of a sentence or a clause along the sentences without actually it ending at the end of that particular line. It continues into the next line, right? The sun hovered above. यहाँ पर एक line कट जाएगा. The horizon suspended in the amber sky, right? So in and the amber sky comes in the next line. That's how the poet has written to give a sense of fluidity and dynamism to the poem. Then the rhyme scheme, of course, the repetition of similar sounds at the ends of lines in poetry. That's how you know whether it is A or AABB or ABCD. Then you again go into ABCD. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder you what you are, right? So it is a clear case of rhyming. Apostrophe. Now, addressing an absent person, abstract idea, or an inanimate object as if it were present or alive. For example, in Death Be Not Proud by John Donne, it is death is addressed as if, ironically enough, as if death were a living person. Death ko address kiya gaya hai, death be not proud. I mean, how can you, first of all, it's a case of, you're making it seem as if it's an animate thing, and death again is an abstract idea. It is not a living being. So it's a case of apostrophe. Then allegory. Now, it's a narrative form that has a deeper meaning and it has usually a moral lesson at the end of the poem. Political or religious, I don't know how many of you have read Animal Farm. It is a must read book by George Orwell. It is an allegory about the political system, and you would find it very strange that how much of what all he wrote is actually true even in the 21st century. It's a must-read book. You must read it because it will give you a lot of awareness about the systems that are prevalent in society. Allusion. It is a brief reference to a person, place, event, or work of art, often indirect. He's the real Romeo with the ladies. You're using a particular term in order to convey a larger meaning. You know that, oh, when you say he's a real Romeo or he's a real Casanova, you can kind of, you're labeling someone as a particular thing, right? So that's what it's being conveyed here. Paradox is a statement that seems contradictory but reveals a deeper truth. Less is more. Less is more, right? So, you are kind of conveying a very deeper meaning by using two words which are otherwise contradictory to each other. Death, thou shalt die. Death be not proud in that poem. Death, thou shalt die. How will death die? How will death die, right? It has a very deep meaning because he's confronting death, saying that death, even you will die, right? So he's having a confrontational tone by using a particular phrase which you would think, does it really make sense? Then pun. Someone has been asking me about pun, and I thought I'll explain it in this video. Pun, and puns are, according to me, an indication of someone's smartness in using words. In fact, there are two of my friends with who I kind of spar every now and then. We just talk, let's say, for 10-15 minutes on the over the phone, and we just indulge in lots of puns. One of them, both of them senior journalists. One of them is also a filmmaker. He used to work with the PTI, then with the Tribune, and now he's a columnist, and great political sense. And we just kind of, talking in using a lot of puns to kind of talk about different political scenarios. Other one was my ex-colleague. She's also now a filmmaker, again with great ability to use puns when you're talking. So a pun is essentially a play on words, often for humorous or rhetorical effect. I'm reading a book on anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. Now you see, the moment you hear something like this, you'll feel amused because it's a book on anti-gravity. And then you say, I'm finding it impossible to put it down. Means that it's a great book. I'm finding it's an unput downable book. You're not able, because it's a page turner, right? And the book is on anti-gravity. So anti-gravity, put down, so it is the use of a pun just to kind of create a more witty or humorous effect. Okay. Metonymy. Right. It is replacing the name of something with the name of something closely related. For example, the crown, when you're referring to the British government in the days before independence, to refer to royalty. Or when you're talking about Rahul Dravid, you refer to him as the wall, right? Don't we? Sachin Tendulkar, we refer to him as Master Blaster, right? So Shah Rukh Khan, we refer to him as the king, right? These are all terms like Chiranjeevi, the Telugu superstar, is referred to as the mega star. Rajnikant is referred to as the superstar, right? So these are the kind of titles which have been bestowed on people by their loved ones, and that's how it kind of works. So this is that kind of a literary device. Now this one, sa nek da ki. Okay, it is a figure of speech where a part represents the whole, which means all hands on deck. Hands represents sailors. On hands on deck means that everyone needs to be at their job because the ship is about to set sail. So all hands. So all, it doesn't mean that only the hands will be there. It means the entire body, right? So sometimes you will say, you will refer to only the eyes, but it doesn't mean that only the eyes. You're talking about the entire person. So one part of his heart is not in it. Now, of course, heart means that, he's not interested, but you're talking only about the heart. It doesn't mean that only this particular organ is not interested. It means that that particular person is not interested in that particular job. Okay. With this, all the figures of speech, more or less, I have not done something like transferred epithet, etc., which I have explained in the poems, etc., in the explanation videos, which is there. I think that's the one which I have left out, where you kind of transfer the quality of something onto something else. That's essentially it means. But these largely will give you a sense of what is it that you need to identify and how to identify a particular figure of speech. I hope this video was of use for anyone who is doing literature, whether it's class 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, at any level, or even at graduation level. This kind of a clarity will help you in identifying which figure of speech has been used by the poet or the author at which place. Okay, thank you very much. Tata, bye bye. Till the next video, study well, focus well, and do well.